Hey everyone, so recently we've got this new Insignia tool added, and a lot of people don't really know how to use it, so I'm just thinking it would be a nice idea if I could make a tutorial about this. So I'll just show an example about the basics and how to rotate, translate, aka that's like moving like that way, up and down. Resize is obviously resizing it. And yeah, so what I like to do is go slowly, because when you tend to go fast, you tend to hit the delete button by accident when you're clicking fast on that by accident. So I would highly recommend just going slow. So I'm going to show you how to put insignias on a model. Could be any model. It could be a tank, an aircraft, or ship. It doesn't work on infantry. Do not use infantry. So yeah, so what I like to do is I like to try and recreate certain planes by the decals from it. So, and when you click, if you go to customize and then you click insignia, you'll get this tool. So, and it'll say decal ID. So what you want to do is that you want to think of an decal you want, then you want to go to the Roblox website and find a decal. I'm going to be using a decal for the red line to create an actual SR71 at the back. The decal is 1183034453. When I click the plus button, it will come up with this green diamond. Now, when I click this diamond, now do not be using these. These are basically useless unless you really want to make it fast moving. What I like to use is these buttons. So what I do is I click translate and I press the middle button to go up and down, the top to go left or right, and the bottom to go forward or back. Think of it as X, Y, and I don't know what the other one is. But yeah. You can also use spacebar to deselect the decal, which will be pretty useful if you don't want to delete it, or you want to delete another decal, or if you just don't want these things. So here's my decal right there. Pretty hard to see, so what I'm going to do is go into resize, and I click that. Now you see, it's not resizing pretty quick. This is where this one comes into place. So these are basically, I don't know what they called, but when you select a number like 1, it'll go up by 1. If you select a number, it'll select by 1. The bottom is the width, top is the length, and the middle is going up or down, but it's a little bit buggy. You won't be using the middle. You won't be using the middle at all. You'll be only using the top or the bottom and the resize. So what I'm meaning by this is that it's set to 1, so when I click minus, it's going down by 1, but if I set it to 0.1, it'll go down by 0.1, so it's going from 10.8 to 10.7, so on. It's much smoother, so it's easier to use. Technically, you'll be using only 1 to 0. Don't worry if it's just 0. 0 will be 0.001. You'll technically be using 1 to 0.1 for resize, 0.01 for rotation, or maybe a little bit more. But for translate, you will be using more than... You will be using 0.1 to 0. You won't be using 1, ever. Do not use 1, because it's way too much. So, these 2 tabs, I would recommend you just don't touch them, so you don't accidentally ruin the... Global, basically, is like these things. So if I go to rotate, it'll come up with this, but if I click global, that's going to change. If I click local, that changes that. So you'll technically be not touching it. So I'm going to build the SR-71. So what I like to do is to keep it usually not as wide, but kind of wide, so we can see it, but not too big for the beginning. So when I click this button, it will move to the left, and so WASD will control the cameras. Shift, if you hold shift and then use WASD, it will go slower. If you use control, it'll go much slower. I would recommend using control, not using shift. So now you've got your decal set. You'll now want to rotate it. So you can tell that this is on an angle. You'll be rotating it at the bottom. If you don't know which way it is, just click 1, and if it goes the wrong way, just click it back into normal place. And so, yeah. So now that it's in rotation place, we can now clone it. Cloning is just going to clone will copy and paste it. I'm going to set that to 0 so we can get a much smoother experience. So you see that it's much smoother. It's much better for accuracy. So now this is kind of the hard bit. Usually when you're trying to do some rotations, it can be quite hard, because when you're rotating it this way, it'll rotate like that. So you're going to have to do some trial and error. So you have to do some trial and error in order to get the actual measurement for this. Like for me, that looks pretty nice. So I'll go back to translate, and now I'll start using the middle. Now that's clipping into it. So that obviously means that it's not... That obviously means that the rotation is not enough, or the thing is too long. I think it's too long, for my opinion, so I'm going to resize it down a little bit. So I'm going to put it to 0.1 and make it 1.5 in length. I'm also going to make it move it up a little. I'm also going to make it move towards. Now this is the part that kind of confused me. So when you're starting to put the things together, when you're connecting the lines together, you'll see that sometimes you can see that over here that you've got a nice and perfect, but when you look over there, it's off-centered. Now, you don't want to complain about that. That's normal, just means you haven't got it the correct height. You see here, you can see there that it's not actually the correct height. So I'm going to rise it, also going to bring it out, and also make it as close as I can. And then look at it from the middle and see if it's okay. Now that looks fine. So now when I look around, it's not really moving around, which means that it's in a perfect position. I'm also going to make this smaller. Now when you make it smaller, it's going to be doing it on both sides. So make note of that. So you'll have to definitely change its rotation again. So now that... Oh, no. So now that you've got the thing, so now that you've got the, right, yeah, it takes a couple of trial and error to actually do this correctly. It take quite long. So now that I've got the line, I can now clone it again. But what I like to do is I like to go to this one and reflect. Now reflecting is going to copy and paste it, but it's going to shift it to the other side of it. Basically, it's just mirroring. So when you do this and then hit this one, you'll see that that's also there. But you'll see that it might also sometimes, it might not be centered enough. That's normal. Just adjust it. That's normal. It's not always accurate. So now that it's centered, now that it's pretty centered, press spacebar to deselect it, and now select the other side, well, any side you want to do. Select any side you want to do. It can be this side or the other side. It doesn't really matter because as soon as you finish the other side, you're going to be reflecting it to the other side anyway. So, yeah. So now I click clone. And now that it's cloned, I can now shift this. But now I want a line going straight through that way. Not all the way, because that's what the picture looks like. You can use a picture from Google Images, something, to get a good example of what it looks like. So, when you start moving it, you're going to want to start rotating it again. Now, don't worry, again, like I said, if it doesn't do it correctly, it's just going to take a couple of trial and error. So don't panic. You see, that took quite a fair bit of while for me, but I eventually got it. It doesn't also have to be leveled in rotation. It would be best if it was, but you don't actually have to. If you want it to be rotated nearly the same, just click here and then see if it looks the same. But if it does, but if it's not and it doesn't look like the same, don't change it. But see here that it looks 45 minus -45, but on this it says -35, but -45 is still the same for this. That means I'm not going to change it at all. I'm keeping it so I don't do any more mistakes. You don't need to make this perfectly. You also don't need the decals to go as close as possible to the model. Technically, you want it as close as you want, but not too close. Well, the model is just going to clip through the decal. So now, since this is going to be the straight line, I'm going to translate. I'm going to put this to 0.1. I'm going to move it over here, and I'm also going to resize it bigger. There looks big enough. Wait. There, you can also use this to get an accurate representation. This looks perfect enough, 36. You want to keep the width the same. So now I go back into translate. I reset that number back to 0 for more smoother moving. And then I start moving this. It's not a bad idea using Q and E with the control button to get an accurate position of your height. It's easier to do it like that. So now that you've got this, check that it doesn't clip. If you wanted to see it not clip more, you can use rotate or the resize button to get rid of that button. Makes it easier to see. So now we have the big line, and it's pretty well matched up, at least in my opinion. Doesn't have to be perfect. You can now press the reflect button again, and now it will shift it to this. Now you see here, that's not the same. Don't worry, just just readjust that. It doesn't readjust the other one. So what I'm technically going to do is I'm going to start. I just accidentally moved the width. You want to be careful with that. So now I'm going to make it move closer a little bit. But what the thing is what I'm looking for is the height. You see, that's where it is. So usually it'll be there, at least in my opinion. And now I start moving it this way. Then I start moving it up just a little bit, not too much. Now I press space. So then, as soon as I look around, you can see that if it starts moving. Now you see that's moving kind of a bit. So it must mean that it's not in the correct position. Yeah, it is not it's not in the correct position. You need to move it a little bit more in. Now when I look around, it's much more perfect. When you're using lines, it's a good idea to then go to deployment and then go to any spawn to check your lines. So when you check the lines, you can see how big they are. If you can see them properly, it means they're big enough. If you can't really see them easily, then it's not wide enough. So yeah, this is basically what I use to build the SR-71, and using some commentary to help you use the Insignia tool. Now, the give save loadout button does not work at this time. Same with that lever. You won't be using that. They don't work yet. So now that if you made a mistake, so let's just say that you added the wrong decal. Let's say that you added the wrong decal. Yeah, let's say you added the wrong decal. And so you don't want that. Well, what you can do is press delete. It'll be gone. And if you want it back, you just go back you just press this plus button again. Make sure you have the ID in. If the ID does not work, it either means that the decal is not working or it's been banned from Roblox. Anyways, I hope this helps you. I hope this helps you gives you a much clearer walkthrough to the Insignia tool, and hope you guys make very cool skins about vehicles in this game. Thanks, and good luck.